That's extraordinary. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُ أُمَّتِي عَلَى الضَّلَالَةِ. My ummah doesn't agree on error. What he did was literally write a book called Ihya Ulum ad-Din. I mean, you know, I'm talking to a man who's translating it in a beautiful language, which is wonderful that you've done that you've learned Arabic to such a high level, and mashallah, you've also got the gifts of English. That because I think you mentioned these appalling translations. I think one of the injustices of our age is people who are not qualified to translating books. I mean, I have struggled personally in my own self should I translate or shouldn't I, just out of kind of awareness of my own limitations, not only with Arabic but with English as well, because I think to take works of such majestic language, I mean, you know the language that these books have been written in, and certainly the Quran and the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which are in some of the most exalted language that human beings have ever used, to take that and put it into this pathetic English.
It's blasphemous as well.
I think it is a blasphemy, because what you're doing is a Western person that reads that and this saying it's reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, and then you have this English that doesn't even make sense. It's making our Prophet look like he was not comprehensible, that he couldn't put sentences together. Really, I mean, this is the effect of it, and I think that this is just, I mean, this is a crime. It really is. And I think people like Matraji in Lebanon, I mean, I'll say the name, this woman, you know, just translating these works, they need to fear Allah. They really do. They need to fear Allah. I mean, I know that, mashallah, you have a very strong grasp of the Arabic, but I know you've had to go to scholars, ulama, and have them explain to you passages from the Ihya, which is written in a reasonably, I mean, he's not one of the more abstruse writers.
He was writing for
the awam, right? I mean, and Mustasfa, his book in Usul, is extremely abstruse and complicated language, but his Ihya was literally written for general educated Muslims, and I know that you know you've had to. I mean, isn't that true?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this idea of getting the dictionary out and people using Hans Wehr to which it's a wonderful dictionary personally. I mean, I feel it was a useful job, but it's not a scholastic. It is not a scholastic tool for translating. You know, it's a dictionary you use for the newspaper. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. It says it's modern Arabic.
It's modern Arabic. So you have to go to the great, you know, His lexicon is certainly a remarkable achievement, but it's limited in that after the Qaf, letter Qaf,
died.
Yeah, he died. That's what I said. He never got to Quran.
Yes.
So, yeah, we need to do is we need quality works in English, but getting the whole point, we kind of transgressed here, but the point of this was that Al-Ghazali wrote Ihya Ulum ad-Din. Abdul Qadir al-Jazairi brought back knowledge to Algeria. Uthman Danfodio, that I really think that we need to seriously study as a methodology, because he was dealing with the colonial impact. One of the great mujahids of the Islamic Ummah historically, but not only that, he literally established Khilafah. I mean, he did it. In Sokoto.
The Sanusiya, I think.
And the Sanusiya, the beautiful story of Imam Sanusi when the Turkish came and asked to see his arsenals. The story that he was in Jaqbub, which is where their main zawiya was, and he took him to the library and showed him all their manuscripts, and he said, "This is our arsenal. This is the makhzan," and that is not a kind of flippant remark. I think that the man, he truly meant that, because Allah, like Sayyidina Umar said, we are not given victory because of superior munitions or numbers. He says, Sayyidina Umar says to Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas that almost always these people are over us in munitions, but we are given victory because of our spiritual strength and our moral uprightness, which is based on knowledge. Al-ilmu imam al-amal. Knowledge is the imam of action, and this is something. If we really want a true renaissance, and not just these kind of slogan, Islam is the solution, and Islam la sharqiyya la gharbiyya. If we want to transcend the slogan Islam, then I think we have to revive the sciences of the deen. And to this end, we need youth that are willing to commit. I think there's benefit. Al-Qura in Mecca and Medina University have adopted Western methodologies completely, and I think that my own experience from people that have graduated from those schools, by their own admittance, had told me that they actually felt deprived at the end of the experience. That might not be true for all graduates. I can't speak for all the graduates, but I have met a considerable amount, particularly Western people, that have gone there and really did feel at the end of it that they actually had not acquired a whole lot of knowledge, and also the actual experience was very frustrating and difficult because of the social issues involved. I have not been to Syria myself. I think Mauritania is an incredibly difficult place to live. I mean, I personally got hepatitis, I got dysentery. I really suffered physically living there. But I did, in the Emirates, I lived with great Mauritanian scholars there and benefited greatly. And I think the Emirates is a place that there's potential to study with traditional sheikhs there. There are a considerable number of them. But I know Syria has some very good madrasas that are still in existence. And, people have this idea of the government. And I think we need to get beyond this. What we want is the knowledge. If the government if these shuyukh are not speaking out against the government, I think that we should respect the basira and the firasa, this internal awareness of these teachers, that they're obviously they're trying to preserve the deen. And I think if they're out there shouting against the tyrannical leadership and end up in prison, they're not a whole lot of benefit to the ummah in prison. And it's certainly, we know the hadith that the greatest shaheed is the one who speaks the truth in front of an unjust tyrant. But I think we also have to understand that historically, those who did were one of literally tens of thousands of ulama that were present with institutions functioning. We're in an age that to lose one scholar it's a tragedy. It's a thulma. It's something really frightening. Literally to lose one scholar in Syria or Egypt now is the equivalent of maybe losing 10,000 a few hundred years ago. And I don't think, I don't think that's an exaggeration.
I think it's the case, since you get actually quite frightened when you hear that some great luminary has died, because you know that, okay, he had students, but nobody is anywhere near his level.
Near where his level is. So I think people have to be aware of the age we're living in. One of the things, Ahmed Zarruq ends his book, Al-Qawa'id, with the thing, عَلَى الْمَرْءِ أَنْ يَكُونَ عَارِفًا بِزَمَانِهِ. A man must know the age he's living in. And we have to understand the age we're living in, not be so simplistic and reduce issues to black and white. I mean, Muslims have been aware of fuzzy logic for centuries, right? I mean, that things are not black and white. That there are many, mushtabihat. There's, the Prophet ﷺ said, there's things that are clear, there's things that are unclear, and then there's things that are clearly haram, clearly halal, and بينهما أمور مشتبهات لا يعلمهن كثير من الناس. Only a few people understand those things. And this is an age where people have to recognize that matters are not clear. Things are not clear. And we have to trust the wisdom and guidance of people like Sheikh Saeed Ramadan al-Bulti, who's criticized as being some government lackey. And the truth of the matter is that man is literally preserving Islam in Syria. He's, I think that, subhanAllah, it's really frightening what a lot of young people are.
Well, this black and white tendency, I suppose, is understandable, given the fairly desperate situation of a lot of disenfranchised youth in the West. It's not just among Muslims, I think. You see, I mean, given that the established churches in British Christianity are dying on their feet now, precisely because they can't give clear-cut answers to the
issues of the age,
bewildering problems of the age. You see young people joining strange sects and factions and cults, like the Moonies or David Koresh in your part of the world, or because they can give them clear answers and say, this is right and this is wrong. And if you're with us, you're from the saved faction. Right. But if you do a little bit of that, then you're not acceptable. And all of those people, even though they're 99% of the people who claim to follow our religion, they're completely beyond the pale.
Right.
People like that.
It simplifies matters, doesn't it? Absolutely. I mean, we don't have to think.
Yeah.
We don't have أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Don't you use your intellects? I mean, it's certainly easy just to surrender my mind to an ideology, which I hate that word. You know, I really, it bothers me that people talk about the Islamic ideology, because nowhere do I find that. I mean, even in Arabic, ideologia, there's not even a translation for the word. You know, this idea that Islam is some kind of ideology. I mean, Islam is literally, I like the idea of orthopraxis, you know, that it's literally, it's a correct mode of behavior based on a clear understanding. You know, but it's certainly not this ideology that we learn like a Marxist learns, you know, the vocabulary of Marxism,
and then the slogans and your
the
symbols and your membership card,
the taghut,
the takbir, which becomes a kind of Sikh Heil that you shout on your rallies.
Absolutely.
No, I think there's a lot of useful comparisons that one can draw between the strange sects in Christianity, like the Moonies or the Branch Davidians or whatever, and some of the young cults that are appearing in the
Islam.
Muslim situation.
It's a good point.
In the West, but also in the Islamic world. They're the fruit of the same paradox, really.
And we need also to recognize this is something that, you know, I mentioned a lot, is that we need to recognize the historical context in which we live. That Islam, I literally believe that the vast majority of these groups now that have names, and I really don't want to go into naming people, and you know, but the groups that adhere to these names and titles and things like that, they're going to be historical footnotes, you know, in the history of Islam.
Sure.
We have the Murja'iyya, we have the Qadariyya, we have the Mujassima, we have the Mu'tazila, we have the Khawarij, we have all these Ibadiyya, and on and on and on, the Safavids, and all these sects that have come and gone. But Islam has remained. It has remained. Islam is not an ephemeral, temporal, contextual idea. Islam is, it's Deen al-Haq. It is the Deen of the truth, and it will remain. It will be preserved by the promise of Allah and the promise of His Messenger, by us or by others than us. وَإِن تَتَوَلَّوْا يَسْتَبْدِلْ قَوْمًا غَيْرَكُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَكُونُوا أَمْثَالَكُمْ. If you don't do it, Allah will replace you with people that will do it, and they won't be like you. And this is it. You know, Islam will remain. We will all die, but Islam will remain, and it will remain by people, by human beings that stand up and preserve it in every age and teach it.
And do you think that preservation is exclusively academic? What if a young person says, okay, I'm just not very academically gifted, I don't have that.
Absolutely.
What kind of career path would you advise such a person to aim for? I mean, what would be more generally your advice to young people here?
To young people, yeah, I don't think everybody is academically inclined, and I don't really believe that is. You know, it's like saying in these books this wretched statement that the main purpose of a woman is to bear children. Have you come across that in these some books on women and Islam? I mean, nowhere in the Quran does it say that. In fact, it says that we make some women barren. And what? She's lost her main role. A woman's role is to know Allah and His Messenger and to act accordingly. You know, I mean, it certainly is a primary role, but we can't say that this is the main role. No, the main role is, like Ibn Ashir says, أول واجب العالم من كل فم ومكن من نذر أن يعرف الله ورسوله بالصفات مما نصب عليه الآيات. The first obligation of every human being who has taklif is to know Allah and His Messenger, based on how the knowledge has been preserved. So I think that people should learn the Fard Ayn, but I also think they should be committed to some study. I mean, I believe, you know, it's not the idea of maybe becoming an academic or becoming a scholar, but we should be maintained to growth, to intellectual growth, because I really don't see any excuse for that. we should all be committed to some. People should commit themselves to learning the Quran, to reciting it, to thinking about it, to listening to what the scholars say about it, and committed to going to the masjid, and to partaking in circles that are beneficial, right, that are imparting knowledge. And other than that, I think we need to look at areas. We need people in media. We need people, journalists. We need artists. Quite literally. I mean, art is an essential element of civilization, and the Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ told us, "Inna Allah jamilun wa yuhibbul jamal." Allah is beautiful and He loves beauty. And one of the beauties of Islamic civilization is that even the Bedouin have these, they make beautiful rugs, they have beautiful pillows. In Mauritania, I always like to mention, they take these big pens, these plastic pens, they take off the plastic and they make their own beautiful metal cases because they think it's the pen. وَالْقَلَمِ وَمَا يَسْطُرُونَ. Allah swears by the pen, عَلَّمَ بِالْقَلَمِ, that it should be honored, and they just, they don't think that the plastic is really befitting. And that is some aesthetic understanding that really we love. Malik bin Nabi says that, one of the essential elements of civilization is the aesthetic aspects. And he said one of the proofs of the extraordinary level of loss of our civilization is that we ornament our houses with plastic, calligraphed plastic cups and things like that have been made in some factory in China by non-Muslims or something like that, and we don't respect the. So I think we need calligraphers. We need people to go and learn calligraphy. That's not an academic task, but it's a beautiful and wonderful.
And as a means of da'wah, it's so powerful, isn't it? I mean, a Westerner can't argue with Islamic art. Exactly. He can argue with an Ahmed Didat pamphlet and say, look, there's this, that and the other wrong with it. But if you present him with a carpet from Ardabil or somewhere, or a picture of the Taj Mahal, he has to accept it on some level.
Exactly. What produced that? Exactly. I mean, when I went to Granada, seeing the Alhambra, I mean, barbarians can't do this, I mean, barbarians cannot produce what these people produced. And this is a proof against all their claims about, this, but we have to stop living on the glories of the past, as an ummah. We have to stop pointing to the past. Like, the Andalusian said, تِلْكَ أَثَارُنَا تَدُلُّ عَلَيْنَا فَانْظُرُوا بَعْدَنَا إِلَى الْأَثَارِ. These are our traces. They indicate who we were. So look after we're gone at what we've left behind. And this is what we as an ummah have to ask ourselves. Can we say this to the generations that are going to follow us? Here's what we've left behind. Look at our traces and see who we are. What is it telling the future generations about who we are? Look at our pamphlets. We don't even have academic. We've become an ummah of pamphleteers. Everybody writes these pamphlets. What is Islam? Why you shouldn't move your finger in the prayer. Why you should hold your hands here as opposed. Where are the great works? Where are the great intellectual achievements? Where are the artistic achievements? Even clothes have become.
It's true. I'm sure that one of the most damning indictments one could make of the modern Islamic revivalists or ideologists, and I'm not talking about all of the individuals who follow them, but the general parameters which they've set up for themselves, is the fact that really for the first time in Islamic history we have a mass movement with no cultural riches to it. If you look at what the Sahaba produced, within 100 years there was the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, one of the great monuments of human civilization.
And they're the Salaf, they're part of the Salaf.
The mushafs that they wrote, the architecture, the art, the extraordinary poetry, the outpouring of creativity from the human spirit. Because if the human spirit is truly enlightened by religion, it has to flow out like light from the sun. It has to make the world beautiful. But where is the cultural renaissance that goes with the modern Islam?
No, you go into a mosque now, and Muslims, we've been transmogrified into just these odd creatures. I mean, even our clothes don't. One of the things about Western clothes I mean, they're really kind of ugly clothes in my perspective. I mean, I thought that before I was Muslim. Muslim clothes are beautiful. They're Khalifa clothes. That's what I like to call them. They're Khalifa clothes. They honor Bani Adam. But one of the things about, I mean, at least a lot of Western people know how to wear Western clothes. One of the things you find Muslim people, they don't even, they look like caricatures.
You take a Sudanese villager out of his robe and turban and put him into what Western clothes he can find, and it's appalling.
Suddenly
immediately
he looks
they become
pathetic.
Sort of guest workers.
Rather than these noble people with subhanAllah. There's a hadith Al-Bayhaqi relates that has some weakness in it, but I think historically it's fascinating. He said that Al-Amaimu Tijanu Al-Arab إذا وضعوها وضع الله عزهم, that the turbans are the crowns of the Arab people, and when they take them off, Allah will take away their dignity. And it's fascinating that you can see that the Tanzimat in the 1850s, I think you're much more knowledgeable about this than I am, but when one of the things that they did was literally get the turbans off the Ummah, and this is a really major turning point in the beginning of the decline and disintegration of the Muslim power and dignity and
because if you change people's outward form, it has an effect on the inward. We believe in the intermingling of the body and the spirit. Unlike if you do something to your outward, it affects your spirit. If you do something to your spirit, it will
manifest on the outward. Absolutely. Yeah. Subhanallah. It's very true.
Anyway, thank you very much for your time.
Well,
I really
enjoyed
it. I've learned 10 times more than you have.
No, that's not true. Alhamdulillah. Well, it's one of the reasons that I was excited about coming here, and I'm not just, this isn't just some mujamalat, but I really was looking forward to seeing you. I think that the work that you're doing is, you're just one of the few scholars right now that's just doing work of such a high caliber that I think it's
I just hope that Allah will accept all our intentions, inshallah.
Yeah. So, and I really hope that more people begin to take this task upon themselves of presenting Islam to the West. I think that, just to finish this off, I think the Europeans and the Americans are at such a deep crisis right now. They really are. They're aware of it. Their intellectuals are aware of it. Their writings are shouting it out. Thoreau said most people live lives of quiet desperation. The desperation is no longer quiet. It's literally people are shouting it at the top of their lungs. And Islam took the most savage, bloody people that could bury their daughters alive, people that could eat the livers of their enemies, on the battlefield. A woman that could do that. It took those people and transformed them into these deeply human, compassionate people that had a thirst for knowledge and were imbued with the love of God, that they literally went and they transformed the world. And we cannot, the Anglo-Saxons have a horrific history, of what they've done to the world, the havoc that they've wreaked upon the world, but they are recipients of the mercy of Allah just like anybody else. The French, we know what they did to the Muslims, but we also know what the mushrikeen did to the Prophet ﷺ, and he took Islam to them. He gave it to them, and they became the people that literally went out and transformed the world. And I think Allah, in His deep and infinite wisdom, has placed the Muslims in the heart of the Western world. And this has happened historically before. The Christians were thrust into the heart of the Roman Empire, and they transformed it. They really did. They transformed it. And their enemies who had persecuted them for 3 centuries adopted their religion, and I don't see why it can't happen again. I mean, I believe in the power of Allah, and I believe in the transformative message of Islam, and I really believe that this is Deen al-Fitra. that people will recognize the truth of it. We have a massive amount of work ahead of us. You know, you're fully aware of that, and I'm aware of it, and we don't have time to bicker. You know, we don't have time to get in petty confrontations with each other. This is a time where we really have to unite and do some serious jihad and ijtihad, and do some dhikr, fikr and shukr, and take this deen out to the people. You know, I think they're thirsty for it. The earth is thirsty for it. You know, this earth wants to be worshipped on. It doesn't want that. And the earth is thirsty for it. And we need to heal the earth as well, not just the people on it, but the earth is suffering from our gross injustices. So I hope, inshallah, you know, the people hearing this, you know, will just think about these things, and I hope, inshallah, there's some benefit. One of my favorite verses in the Quran, and all of the Quran is really my favorite verses, but الَّذِينَ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقَوْلَ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَ, those who listen to what's said and they follow the best of it. So inshallah, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this conversation is some benefit, and people can derive some benefit and meaning from it, and take what's useful from it and discard what's not. Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khairan.